Welcome to Minecraft hard mode LARPing.
Amen.
As I like to call it, LARPing times 10 hardness, because makes everything 10 times harder, as I like to say, such as everything's 10 times easier to screw up and 10 times harder to clean up, because it's just a very volatile type of environment to be in. But basically what we're going to be talking about today is kind of the do's and don'ts of winter warfighting. Yeah. Be going over clothing layers. I'm not a very good example because I didn't feel the need to bring warming layers.
Yeah.
But I feel fine. Anywho, we're gonna be going over this guy. Now, unlike me, I actually kind of have stuff to get me ready for this type of environment. Actually, two things technically. Thank you to Finland and Reproduction Wehrmacht clothing. Even though Fiskars likes to shit on this, or whoever it was. What was it, Fiskars?
Yeah, it was Fiskars.
Yeah, Fiskars likes to shit on the Wehrmacht camouflage, but whatever. It's useful every once in a while. But here, we're gonna be going over my buddy here with Marpet pants and a DPM smock. Anywho, as you can see, kind of sticks out like a sore thumb unless he's standing against a tree. And even then,
which is the way I thought about it. Yeah.
There you go. And even then, you would need a bit of a more brown camo to go with the trees because they're all kind of dead and wet. So that's something else that we're going to be talking about later, which is going to be the survival aspect of fighting in the winter. You can't really set fires because everything's going to be fucking soaked, especially depending on where you live.
It's just harder.
It just makes things harder, yeah. Like I said in the start. Anywho, we're going to be going over this guy. So you have his base layer of an EVH shirt. We love you, Van Halen.
T-shirt, yep.
You have his warming layer, which is his dad's company's.
Yeah, I gotta cover up the logo.
His dad's company's.
Fucking fleece jacket.
Fleece jacket. And then, as you can see, we have his camouflage layer. I know we're calling it all the wrong thing. You can call it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, whatever. We're gonna go base, warming, and camouflage.
Yep.
I don't know what he has in his pants. I'm not going to take his pants off because this is not.
I have an ECWCS thermal underlayer from the 90s.
What he said. And that would be his warming layer as well. Then he has his base layer of tidy whities, of course.
Clearly.
A given.
Adult diaper.
Just cut. We're going to go over the layering system now. Like I said, we got the base layer, warming, and then camouflage. Base layer is just there to separate everything else from the skin, because some of these materials on the inside, this wouldn't be comfortable to rub on your sack or something, you know what I'm saying?
Pretty soft.
Shut the fuck up. Anywho, this wouldn't be really comfortable and you can chafe, depending on what you use as a warming layer. Continuing on. And then of course, typically your warming layer is not going to be some sort of camouflage, such as, now for me, like I said, my warming layer is just a very constrictive finish uniform.
So I could DIY.
Yeah, basically. Because what I usually do is just put a fucking hoodie on, but I didn't feel like doing that. And then the given camouflage layer, as we all know.
The camouflage layer should also act like a windbreaker in this environment.
Same with the warming too, if you really want to get into it, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're warming, you're not going to fucking die of hypothermia.
Yep.
The biggest thing between all three of these though is the base layer and the camouflage layer can soak up a little bit of wetness because of course you're going to get soaked. You have frozen water, just covering the ground. It's just a given. You're going to get soaked at some point, and then all of it's melting already. So
that's why you should really invest into Gore-Tex and stuff like, and especially if with your base layer when you start to sweat, you should really invest into something that's gonna. You should really invest into something that's gonna wick that sweat, so that way you're not living in it, so it doesn't get cold. Under Armour's really good for that. We kind of did this as a last-minute thing. As I said, the time we LARP is not dependent on us; it's dependent on other things. So, but
what he said. That's about it for the layering systems. Next thing we're going to talk about is kind of the do's and don'ts of moving around and setting up bases or patrol bases or wherever the fuck you're gonna stay for the night. So yeah, there you go. Now as you can see, Billy Bob Joe over here also has his helmet, which we forgot to talk about, but this is only a camouflage layer, and then occasionally a protection layer, or utility layer, because this GoPro was mounted on its helmet. You can also do that with PVS 14s, but we're broke.
True.
Continuing on. As you can see, it's just a base layer of what looks to be OD green, and then some cum-ridden bed sheets that he's chopped up and then tied on, which works.
Yeah, it works.
But, you know, another issue is when you start getting that wet, it starts to get a tiny bit transparent and then gets off-colored and doesn't blend in as well, but that's just like nitpicky type of things.
Yeah.
Anywho, but the biggest thing we're talking about now is the massive fucking trail you will leave behind wherever you may go. You can't even see some over there if you look hard enough. But, yeah, this is a massive trail you will leave behind inevitably, which is where my biggest motto is: everything's 10 times easier to screw up and then 10 times harder to clean up. Because it's really hard to clean up your tracks in the snow, because no matter how hard you try to kick snow around or whatever, it's going to be obvious that you've been around, because the warmness of your feet, and then, you know, just the snow melting, and depending on how cold it is, everything's going to turn to slush, or it's just going to make such a deep dividend. It's not really going to be easy to, you know, unfuck per se, unless it starts snowing again. Now, we've given you a problem, but no solution. So, in this case, the solution to get rid of all of this is, say you're walking down this trail that has since been covered up with a log, which is very recent actually. We didn't notice our usual spot until I looked over here, because I have the perfect eyesight because I'm an A10. Never mind. But if you're walking across the trail, right, you know, you'll see there's some spots that the snow is already soaked through, and you can see leaves and stuff. That would be good spots to walk on because your track won't be there as much. But another thing you can do if it's very heavy snow that is hard to hide is, say you're walking down the trail and about up to one of these trees, you take a sharp right and then start walking, then double back and keep going down the trail. So if somebody's tracking you, they'll go out of their way to go up there, realize that it ends, get confused, come back, and then realize the trail keeps going. But the only downside to that is that, trying to think, when the person tracking you gets over there, or before he gets over there, sorry, he might even see when you've double backed and then kept going straight down that trail and just say, oh, this was meant to be a distraction. So he just keeps going. So there's really no guaranteed fix, but there are small little things you can do.
It's a time waster, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More of a time waster if the tracker falls for it. Another thing you can do is snowshoes, or like the tennis racket looking shoes you can put on your feet to kind of like crush the snow and then keep going, so it's not a defined boot print or something, but you know, you get the idea. But now we're gonna give an example of Billy Bob right here, Billy Bob Joe. He's going to be my prey and I'm going to be the predator. Alright, so this illustration looks like it is straight out of kindergarten, but I'll try to give you a bit of detail. So say this is your main trail you're trying to follow to get to your next objective or whatever. Got some trees and shit around it. That's a given, because you should be riding in the woods. You shouldn't be not riding, but you should be walking in the woods, and not in the open, because if you do, you're fucking retarded. Anyway, you can see these arrows. This shows you where you're going. And my right in the rain is getting soaked.
Well, that's why you write in the rain. It's meant for this.
Anywho, but you see, you start, somewhere back here, keep walking, and then you move up, make a loop-de-loop, double back, and then keep going. And then an idea the man behind the camera came up with was, so what you do is, coming up the trail, divert, do whatever you want here, go down there at least 40 meters, then go all the way back around to where you started, and then keep going down the trail. But make sure you make it obvious that you most definitely parted off over here, did your business, so it's harder for whoever to track you to realize, oh, he was fucking with me, and he just kept going that way. Ta-da. Now, another thing I learned from my time in the Queer Scouts of America is with any sort of water device, of course you have this packing here, all sorts of fucking difficult. And what you do is you boil some water, throw it in one of these, get it tight as possible, right? And then tuck it with you into your sleep system to keep warm. Overall, it will eventually get a little bit cold, and when it does, just throw it out onto the ground or something. Get it away from you, because the colder you get, the worse it's going to be. But that's just a little pro tip I learned from the absolute pros of survival in the Queer Scouts.